Hello. Hey. Hello. I'm so excited to be back doing this. I know that we've already gone over that in the previous introduction, but you are listening to Nashville Demystified. Nashville Demystified is a show in which I, Alex Steed, get to talk with folks from Nashville about what makes it so Nashville-y. Really, though, we're here to understand the city better by talking with folks who are in and of the city in one way or another. This week we talk with Craig Havighurst about the Station Inn. And Craig's a music journalist. He blogs about music. He's the host of The String, which is a music talk show and podcast. It's really fantastic. He is the author of Air Castle of the South, WSM, and the Making of Music City. I mean, he knows things. He gets things. I like Craig a whole lot. I met him when, I don't know, a handful of months into making Nashville Demystified, we ran into each other, and as we talk about in this podcast, we had some burgers, we chatted, and I just really, really enjoy Craig. And I wanted to talk with someone about the Station Inn in particular. The first place that I came to when I came to Nashville and I was like looking for a place to live, I stopped by the Station Inn. And I've talked about this on this show before, but I just had such an amazing time there. Everything about it I was in love with. And it's kind of how I decided I was going to move to Nashville, really. I mean, it's one of the many reasons, but going to the Station Inn, I was like, this is it. Like, how could I not want to be here? And so after the passing of JT Gray, obviously back in March, the owner of the Station Inn, I wanted to talk about it a bit. And so I thought Craig made a lot of sense as far as someone to reach out to. And we also talk about what is coming up in his life, what's coming up music venue-wise, what's going on in the city with regard to the Station Inn, the status of music venues, the status of the Exit Inn. He gives us a little bit of an update there. And yeah, that's just what we wanted to do. Hey, just so you know, Nashville Demystified is made possible by Knack Factory, which is a commercial content and video production company that makes video. And that's a thing that you need these days, you know, if you want to get noticed on this here internet, on this here information superhighway. And we're distributed by We Own This Town, which is a collection of podcasts made for and by Nashvillians. And they were kind enough to let me be a part of their family. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I think that's about it. Just a little update from me. I'm working on getting back to Nashville. I'm driving down this week to go just figure out where exactly I'm going to land. So I'll be in the city very soon. I'm going to run some interviews. I'm going to talk with some folks who are going to be on the show. I'm very excited to talk with them. I'm not going to give too much away right now, but I'm eager to be in the same room as some of these people for the first time in quite a while. Folks that I love a good deal. Let's see. What else do we need to talk to you about right now? What am I missing? I know I'm missing something. Oh, God. I can't believe that this is what I was going to forget. Have you heard Tyler's new season of Cocaine and Rhinestones? Like the first episode that's out right now. Have you heard it? It's so good. Tyler Co. was on an episode of Nashville Demystified when we honored David Berman last year, and I love him. I think he's great. I think he's salty. It's a little crusty as far as like the outside opinions and takes go, and I think some folks are intimidated by that a little bit, but I love him, and he's been so sweet to us in a big way, and I just love his show. Like, his show was a show that I listened to a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh shit, I could do this. I could probably do this. And his show is just better than my show when it comes down to quality of what's being made. But it's beautiful. This season is beautiful. The production value's up. You know, I can't believe Cocaine and Rhinestones was the first thing that he made because it was so good. But they've elevated. It's long and it's glorious and it's full of history and it's great. I hope you listen to it. I'm sure you will. I mean, I can't imagine if you're listening to this show, you're not listening to Cocaine and Rhinestones. But go get it. Go get it. Go spend some time with Tyler and learn about the history. All right, that's enough for me. let's talk about Nashville Demystified. Let's talk about the Station Inn. Let's talk about JT Gray. Let's talk with Craig. Thank you so much for doing this. Last time I saw you, it was the only time I saw you in Nashville, and we got cheeseburgers, and it was a delight.
It was. And we discovered we knew a lot of people in common. And how long were you out of Nashville, and when exactly did you slide back?
I was out of Nashville. I was in Nashville for a year, day to day. And then I'd been gone for another year, and now I'm back. And I'm not even technically back. I'm driving down this week to go scout where we land. But yeah, I'm like so spiritually ready to be back that I was like, I'm just going to start the show so that I'm there when I'm there.
I get it.
You know how it is. You're there, and you very clearly have a great deal of love for the place. But it's like beyond, for a place I only spent 1/37th of my life. It's beyond home pretty immediately.
That's good to hear, especially since it is a more crowded arrival situation than it used to be. I can only imagine the difference between arriving in a place at a time when the city was just sort of onboarding people at a manageable rate versus the 100 people a day kind of. That may be a myth, but people do arrive in a more crowded, busy city, and I hope that the neighborliness and openness to newcomers to say, what can we tell you about what this place is special, and who could I introduce you to? I hope that's still alive and well. I believe it is.
I think so, and I think what was so helpful to my experience is I feel like I'm a little bit of an outlier in what my expectation is of Nashville. Like I didn't come to Nashville in hopes of like making it big. I didn't come to Nashville in hopes of like jumping into the music industry. I came because I wanted to be surrounded by thoughtful, creative people, and it delivers in that department. If that's your sole interest is to be surrounded by thoughtful, creative people, it'll deliver 1,000%. If you want any more than that, there's a strong chance you're going to be let down. but it's got neighborliness in spades for sure.
I also think it's still a great place for people that want to contribute to an overall music scene and music industry in those ways that may never get recognized with your name and lights, that there's still that. And there's just the creative entrepreneurship that's been here in the last 10 or 15 years is just remarkable, whether it's craft liquor and beer, or whether it's, tea, or my wife's business with, Sichuan food products, imported directly from the source. I think and she's finding challenging. She needs commercial real estate. And that's definitely up against one of the real challenges of the city is anybody that's trying to move in and find a place to buy or live. Yeah. That's a challenge. But the environment is one that she's really relishing. And I've loved it. I've been here. We'll be 25 years this fall.
Right on, man. You're there and you're a historian of the city. Which is a pretty phenomenal thing. Like I think your WSM book that Olivia Ladd gave me, fellow podcaster / journalist, is glorious. It's the first book I read on the city when I was in the city.
Oh, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much. It would be too much for me to say that I'm a historian of Nashville, but I have done historic research in Nashville on the city and its music city origins. There's many other aspects that are certainly less clear to me, but it was fun to read some of the seminal histories of the city back at the time. And that research is now, 12, 13, 14 years old.
But you wrote the book on that, and which is awesome. And I know you'll be more humble than I will be on your behalf, and I appreciate it. But so I wanted to talk with you because, and when I asked if you were catching up, I meant less, I think I meant more, maybe spiritually, and spiritually is not the right word, but I feel like so many of us are depleted in one way or another after the past year that simply doing stuff like going down the river itself can be like more of a, of a vibrant experience than before, in large part because of how much of a mindfuck this past year has been and the toll that it's taken, and obviously not just a literal death toll, but there's I'm keeping a close eye in particular on what we're talking about today in the Station Inn. And I keep, thinking a lot about venues. I know there's a lot that there were people who were hit during the tornado last year, like the scene where music and culture occurs in town, took a lot of hits in the past little while. So I was curious, before even getting into any of that, I wanted to hear what the Station Inn has meant to you and means to you and meant in some of the research that you did for your book.
Yes, there are connections to the Grand Ole Opry and WSM story because as I thought about this, it kind of struck me that there's really only two. We have wonderful independent venues in Nashville. I think only the Ryman Auditorium and the Station Inn can be uniquely and distinctly associated with the birth and growth of an American genre that is as indigenous to Nashville as jazz is to New Orleans, and that if bluegrass was born at the Ryman in 1945 and 1946, it found its modern footing at the Station Inn. Certainly not the only place. There was a web of festivals through the 70s, 80s until to today. But to the degree that the greatest pickers gravitated, many of them, especially the modernists, gravitated toward Nashville as a place to live when it could have easily been West Coast Bay Area. It could have been Colorado, Boulder, where other bluegrass scenes have grown up and where some of those people came from. The fact that this cadre of extraordinary people moved to Nashville in their 20s largely, and I'm speaking of Bela Fleck, Jerry Douglas, Sam Bush, Edgar Meyer, Tim O'Brien, and a longer list, Mark O'Connor. These were the virtuosos. These were the explorers. These were the people who'd grown up on rock and roll, jazz, art, music, knew what was valuable about classical. They'd studied jazz, harmony, and they were able to take the core bluegrass sound and tradition and instrumentation and just prove to the world how versatile and wide open and expressive and growth-oriented bluegrass could be. And so much of that experimentation went on the stage of the Station Inn, where they could play live for a super appreciative audience in a small space. And in the 80s, it's safe to say that projects like the seminal Strength in Numbers album of 1989 were born. But you also had absolute first-generation classic bluegrass players from Bill Monroe himself and the Stanley and Ralph Stanley anyway. The other Stanley brother died before the Station Inn, but Jimmy Martin, Osborne's, just the first generation also expressed themselves on that stage. So when it showed up on the Grammy Awards just a week before J.T. Gray's death, with J.T. Gray announcing nominees and representing America's independent music venues after their troubled year, it was just absolutely everything came together. It was absolutely perfect. It was 100% deserved, and I think the world knows it is indeed the world-famous Station Inn, as they say on some of the signage. And for me, it was the first venue I visited in Nashville on a very first trip, and wanted to see it because I was a bluegrass fan and not a journalist, just a picker and a friend of the music and curious about how big and wide that world was. And I had to be there. And the first night I was there was a mesmerizing evening with a guitar player I'd already been indulging in and listening to where I was living in Washington, D.C. on one of the big bluegrass stations, WAMU. And so through them, I probably heard about the Station Inn and reading magazines, and I just had to go there. And it's been the place I've spent more nights listening to music since then, since I moved here.
It's so funny. I mean, until you just reframed that question, I had not even thought about the fact that the relationship between the Opry and the Station Inn is not official. You know what I mean? Because like I just see it as like it's like a culture. It's like bookends of a cultural phenomenon, and they're just like logical. They're the logical bookends, right? It's like if bluegrass was born on the Opry stage, and newgrass wasn't necessarily born at the Station Inn, but was found a home and then was able to thrive and was able to have a place to have a community and have a place to center it. I just, in my head, it's like, no, those two things are obviously related, but they're not necessarily obviously related.
The vibe of the backstage of the Grand Ole Opry and the vibe of the station in back and front is quite similar. And there's a reason, for example, that the Time Jumpers Western Swing Band, a sort of supergroup of Nashville, studio and Opry pickers, country pickers, some of the best there are, their origins were backstage at the Grand Ole Opry, playing between sets and just playing a repertoire of classic country music that they loved. And when they wanted to say, let's take this to a stage, they went to JT Gray, and the station inn had been dark on Monday nights prior to that. And JT said, well, let's add and go 7 nights a week with this new band because we trust that they're going to be a draw. And they sold the place out.
Can I ask then, I have a similar love, even though it's much, much, much shorter lived. Before I even moved to town, when I drove down to look for places to live, the station was the first place I went to first night. And I was like, well, this is it. Like, decision has been made for me by way of walking into this building. And I think also that changed my approach to the city as well. I think maybe had I gone and I was just like, I'm just looking for a city to be in that's like optimal for all of the professional reasons that I have, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't have that as like a first cultural experience. I don't know. I think it shaped the flavor or taste or expectation of the city and what was possible by going to that place for the first time. So I'm curious, like from your first time there, like what struck you where you were like, oh, okay, like this is this is the right place to be?
It's a great question. I think one was the astonishment at seeing who was on stage and getting that I was like, what? If I could have ordered up a particular musician at that moment in my life, I was very big into studying flat pick guitar and bluegrass guitar. And David Greer was the artist, and David Greer is I think the heir apparent to the Clarence White approach to that instrument, and is an instrumentalist that I still follow very closely to this day. But so this kismet of, oh my God, the guy I most want to hear live is right here. So then you get the, just comfortable, cozy interior. It felt like it had a homey living room kind of quality. The mismatched chairs and tables looked like a kitchen in a Midwestern household and it reminds me of, in retrospect anyway, of just the way bluegrass gets passed around from citizen to citizen, fan to fan, playing around a circle, playing around a kitchen table. And the neon beer signs and the old bluegrass posters, the festival posters, illustrations of the greats. It was sort of the perfect mental picture of a cozy honky-tonk. And it was, and just super inviting. And from the beginning, there was just a lot of warmth. They always welcome people. I don't remember if I spoke with anybody that first night about it, or I don't recall, but I certainly do recall then after moving in 96 and those subsequent first few years, going pretty regularly to the Sunday night jams as a way to meet people I knew I'd have something in common with as a person who moved to town with about 2 acquaintances and neither of them my age. So I was kind of starting from scratch, and I did indeed meet friends there in the first couple of years at the jam and just going to the bar that are with me to this day.
How does a place like that maintain that? Like, I can imagine, if that place has been like that for as long as it's been like that, I can imagine any number of opportunities came up to not be like that. And to go like, let's remodel, or like, let's get chairs that are all the same kind. Like there are so many different things that could be tempting. And if you got a consultant in there, they would have been really tempting and said to do this, and this. Like, why did it stay in in the way that I probably fell in love with the same exact place you fell in love with 23 years later?
Yes, and it would have looked and felt so similar. That's true. I think a single owner-operator during the entire stretch, JT Gray, is very key to that. Now that he is gone, the people that are carrying on his legacy are deeply indebted to him, deeply friendly, where they were part of his world. There will be continuity there to the degree that it's possible, and he also then, JT in his later years, had to work out a lease situation that gave them the freedom to maintain the club. It wasn't as successful in the 80s and 90s as it is now. I mean, now they can routinely sell out, and it's got, because of the tourist influx and the long-time reputation, as a business venture, it appears to be quite successful on its own terms. Compared to the real estate value of that it sits on, maybe not. But in terms of everybody around it seems to be like, this is the status quo, is exactly where we want to be. But I think the other key answer to that question is that JT was a musician himself and thought like a musician, and the musicians were his touchstones for what's the right way to go with anything. What would the musicians want? If the musicians protest or the musicians want change, it's worth listening to. And they did some remodeling, but it had to do with the backstage, the green room and the bathrooms and storage. So it didn't affect the hall, it didn't affect the room. And I think it's the same ethos that we really have pursued with Music City Roots, which is, if we were the musicians, if we were the band, whether it's the sideman drummer rolling in or the successful singer-songwriter, what makes them comfortable and makes them feel like they've got the stage that they want to be on and can do their best work. I think JT used that North Star.
Did you have a relationship with JT? Did you know JT? Did you see him around? Like, what was your relationship with him?
Yeah, not close friends, but definitely friendly. I consulted him as a reporter numerous times. Would just shoot the breeze with him across the bar sometimes. And he struck me as, in the piece I wrote after his passing, sort of a level-tempered, level-headed country guy with some very deep business acumen and awareness, and a true passion for the music, but he wasn't effusive, personally, outwardly. But, he was just beloved, and I always felt lucky to be talking to him because he had a lot of people that wanted his attention because he did all the booking himself for 40 years. So he made the decisions about the guarantee or, the booking agents, and he would hear from artists themselves, and then he'd have to say, well, does your booking agent know, and have to call the book, so he fielded, so countless calls to keep the calendar full. And I just really, really liked him a lot. And I know that the people that worked, some good friends of mine worked on the documentary about the station Inn, which version 1 was completed in the mid-2000s, and then there was a revised cut that was screened during COVID as a kind of pay-per-view event to raise funds. And there was some updated footage and updated history, and they spent a ton of time with him and just loved him. Just, a father figure kind of guy.
Yeah. So do you know, I assume it's to some degree speculation at this point, but what happens? Does the station Inn stick around? Do you know? Do you have the inside scoop, or do we get to keep hanging out?
I have great confidence that it will, for several reasons. JT left no family, but he has siblings, and he has 2 fellows who are running the booking and the media, the Station Inn TV platform, prior to COVID and then during COVID, during which the Station Inn TV platform and their working with the city and their efforts to keep the room safe for limited number of patrons and the artists on stage were, to my eyes, respected. And they are like, we want to do it as like JT did it, and we want to be here 40 years from now, just as we were 40 years ago. Like, that's their motto. And the other thing that gives me confidence is that the development community around the Gulch appears to have been, since the Icon went in 2003, I don't remember, but since that began to really transform, I've been getting a strong sense that no developer wants to be the one that goes down in history as having crushed the Station Inn, because the reason people want to go down there and live there and pay top dollar for the condominiums is amenities like it. And it's not quite as old as Exit Inn, but it's 40 years old in that location. Everybody recognizes the preservation is vital.
Yeah. And so I know we said that I told you we weren't going to drill down super hard in the Exit Inn, but do you have a sense of what's going on there and what people should expect with that? I know we talked, like, going into all this, I know that we were like, venues are going to hurt. But like a year in, just like looking around at what that actually looks like, it's it's painful. So do you have any sense about where that's at?
I will say that overall, it's better than many predicted, the overall venue situation. There hasn't been the mass extinction event, and with the Save Our Stages money now, people have applied for it, and there were some serious hangups there. But by and large, I've asked artists how many rooms that you rely on and that you play on your circuit, or do you know of, are gone for good? And I've heard anecdotally about 6 or 7 from a variety of people. Not that there aren't closures, but the exit in is a really peculiar and unique situation where the business that was in a leased space was stressed out by COVID and drove Chris Cobb, the proprietor, to develop the Nashville Independent Venue Association to share resources, share strategies, and bring a kind of unified voice to bear to the city and the state and the federal government. And there were some successful efforts to keep the money flowing in. The fact that this developer has purchased the land on which the exit in sits and is simultaneously saying we're a boutique hotel company, but we won't tear down or stop the exit in. We don't want to, end the exit in. You're relying on their word. And Chris and a consortium of people are trying to buy the property and give that buyer a little bit of a profit and say, go away and we're going to run it, with the exit in at the core, and a kind of historic mission for the rock block Elliston Place property that is so core to the story of Nashville's independent music and songwriter scene. And I just haven't seen an update in a couple of weeks. So it is a fluid, dynamic situation, and folks are going to just have to set a Google News alert because we don't know how it's going to all fall out.
So stepping aside from all of that for a second, like, what are you excited about? Like, what does 2021 have in store? I mean, God, it's May already. I don't even know how, but like, what does the rest of 2021 have in store that you're eager and excited about with regard to what's going on in Nashville?
Great question. I wonder if I've ever tried to frame it. And there's 2 channels, because one channel is I'm involved in Music City Roots, as you know, and the show has been on hiatus since early 2018. Once we lost our relationship with the factory in Franklin, we became not financially viable anymore, and we were looking for a home to run the show on Wednesday nights. Now we have investors that have backed a brand new music venue in Madison, and the ground has been broken and construction is going on, and now we at last have, a sort of point of no return, and we're, all of our hopes, and we just didn't want to see those dashed. We now are confident that we're going forward and that we'll be live early next year. February is our goal, and it's going to be a super classy, rustic barn venue with reclaimed timber and a state-of-the-art sound system, and every attention paid to the quality of the music and the experience of the artists and the patrons, and it's going to be extraordinary. And also, I think, but in general, I'm excited about Madison because Dee's Country Lounge has created a wonderful vibrant community. It's just superb. I always get the American Foreign Legion veteran, the AFW hall. I always get the, I think it's a VFW hall down on Gallatin Pike, which has created a honky-tonk scene and a bluegrass scene and become a real hub for fans of classic country music. It's not in Madison, but I sort of feel, because it's Gallatin Pike is all one system, I sort of feel that is contributing. And then I haven't checked up on it recently, but the former people involved with Family Wash and the Cannery are launching a bowling alley, music venue, food venue in Madison as well, in a former Kmart building right off Gallatin Pike as well. And I think there's more plans in store for Madison, and I think Madison's going to be the new East Nashville, if you will.
Madison's very exciting right now.
I think it's a place it's got a great past and a great story with the railroad train, the old train station, and then country music stars lived there in droves in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It was John Hartford's home till he passed away. His great house on the river. Earl Scruggs lived there. Bill Monroe lived there. Maybelle Carter. So there's a real good story to tell about its country music past. And then in general, man, I mean, yes, live music, what little I've seen, already feels just like better than the vaccine. It's just an enormous uplift. And yeah, I think a first show back at the Rhyme and a first show with a full house back at the Station Inn, some songwriter nights maybe at the places. No, I think I made make more effort to get to places that I haven't gone or didn't almost never go to, like the Listening Room, or try to take advantage. I love hanging out at the Tennessee Brew Works where they've got a stage, and there'll be bluegrass there on Wednesday nights. There's going to be more outdoor bluegrass at various artists brewing on Elm Hill Pike, which is a place that is interesting to me because it feels like the proto Nashville, pre-It City Nashville, just like Dee's does. Nothing wrong with the wonderful restaurant scene and some fancy places to live and some slick new jobs. I'm fine with that. I think, and developments like the National Museum of African American Music downtown, which opened in the winter and I think is really ginning up and was going to just see a lot of visitation this summer and fall. And it's just energy returning. And this is a city that is energetic. It's a city where creative people, as you mentioned, they don't just live here. They meet and greet at these cultural events. You visit before and after a Ryman show in the lobby, and you just, the social lubrication of, and for me as a journalist, like, what's up? Who are you listening to? What's exciting you? Or somebody's like, let me introduce you to this person that's right here with me and my friend. And it's just, that's what this place has been about. I will say that the pandemic didn't crush my soul from the point of view of not being out and about. I'm an introverted person. I love my home. I love my studio. I love my desk, my records, and my desk and my books. And so, but yes, missing live music like a crazy person.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, that's like the one thing I try to say to people, like when I know that they're going to Nashville, is like, sometimes I think if you try too hard, you're going to miss what's actually going on. Like, I think that, by just being present, that's when sort of all the opportunity and all the interesting stuff happens. And it's like, when you're like, I have to do this and I have to talk to this person and I have to get this thing done. Like when you have those blinders on, you miss all of the magic that's happening around you at any given time.
You know what else I want to see? I want to see Chris Scruggs at the Local.
Oh, hell yeah.
With Billy Contreras and his unbelievable old-time country string band. That's what I've been telling people for the last 3 years is the ticket. If you come to Nashville, what do you have to see? What you must see? If you can't get into the Time Jumpers at 3rd and Lindsley on Mondays, there's always room on Sundays at Chris Scruggs at the Local.
Yeah, amen,
Magic
man. He's
stuff.
been going at it for decades. Yeah. Oh, it's wild. Well, very man, special. This has been lovely. Thank you so much.
It's great to talk about Nashville, and it's great to see you and hear your voice and to get caught up, and we'll welcome you with open arms, sir.
Yeah, I'm stoked to get some burgers again soon, man.
Just let me know.
Yeah, will do. Thanks so much, Craig. Take care.
All right. So long, Alex.
All right, that is it. Thank you so much for listening to Nashville Demystified. It was great. I'm so glad that we could talk with Craig about all that. He's just a lovely, lovely, good guy. I want to thank Cameron Davidson for making this episode, for making it sound good, for putting it all together. Cameron's great. I can't believe we're back at it. This is the first handful of episodes are going to be me just going like, I can't believe that we're doing this again. Jeez Louise. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. I'm going to get back into it a little more fired up about keeping those things updated. You can find my other show, Why Are Dads, wherever you listen to podcasts, so you can listen to that as well. Check out the shows on We Own This Town, of course. And yeah, that's it. That's it for now. We'll be back soon. I'm going to be in the city in a couple days. I'm so fucking excited about that. All right. Love you guys. Thank you.